Hi there, I'm Dr. Debbie, and today I want to talk to pastors, marriage ministry leaders, lay counselors, marriage mentors, coaches, and even mental health professionals about working with couples and what that's really like. When you get into this work and you have a heart for couples, you want to see everyone succeed. That's just so important to you. And if you're like me, you make an assumption from the beginning that you have two healthy individuals or reasonably healthy individuals that you're working with, and that your goal is to actually help them create the kind of marriage that they want, the kind of marriage that they deserve, the kind of marriage that everybody wants. And in that process of assuming that couples are healthy and their relationship is reasonably healthy, we really want to stop and check ourselves, find out what's really going on with them before we even start. And that's why I like to use a really good assessment with every one of the couples that I work with. And the one I chose years and years ago was Prepare-Enrich. I love it for its research backed instrumentation, the way that they ask the questions is very usable for couples, and it's also very usable for those of us who are trying to help the couples. It tells you very quickly what's going on from each person's point of view. And that's so important as you begin the process. Part of that assessment is looking at a couple type, and it's measuring how much they agree using a score called positive couple agreement and their overall satisfaction in the relationship. Prepare-Enrich has identified 5 different couple types. They've identified vitalized as the highest level, that is the highest scores on positive couple agreement and relationship satisfaction. Those are the vitalized couples. And the second one would be the harmonious couples. Now, both of those sound like they would be pretty easy to work with, right? The next level is a conventional couple, and they're still in a pretty good spot. So, most of whatever you've learned about working with couples is probably going to work pretty well with any of these 3 couple types. But it gets increasingly difficult when you get to the conflicted and devitalized couples. Those folks are struggling with some pretty serious vulnerabilities. And in that case, you got to know what you can do to help them move forward. And I got to say this straight up. It's hard to hear when you really have a heart for couples and you want them all to succeed, that not every marriage can be saved, even with the best of help. And it has nothing to do with your skill or with who you are. It has to do with where the couple is and their ability to face those challenges as individuals as well as together. Now, the first issue that comes up whenever someone reaches out to me for relationship help is the issue of abandonment. When someone chooses to leave the relationship, there's really not a lot that you can do to get them to come back. And trying to engage with somebody in a coaching or even a counseling setting, when the goal is to get that person to return, it's probably not going to work. Now, I know that there are some groups out there, you can find them on the internet, who believe that one person can save the marriage by simply deciding that that's what they're going to do. And they'll often call that standing for the marriage. What it really is, in its most extreme form, is they're actually using a sort of sometimes spiritual or emotional manipulation to try to get the partner to return. If that happens, you're just really tying into a dysfunctional system in the beginning. And if someone has been in that position that you're working with, or they are talking about that and they want you to help them with that, it's going to be a tough situation for you to cope with because the resistance is so high to understanding that each person has choices in a relationship. If someone chooses to leave, that's their choice. They can do that. And I know how painful that is. That's a whole different level of working with someone when abandonment is an issue. Another area that's really super tough is if there's abuse involved. And fortunately, the prepare-enrich assessment actually asks each partner those questions during that inventory that they take online. It will ask about past abuse. It will also ask about current abuse. It'll ask about the partner. It also asks about struggling with substances or pornography, addictions of any kind, which takes us into the next level of concern. If there's an addiction involved, no matter what that addiction is, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, sometimes even work, there's not a whole lot that you can do working with a couple to overcome that. Addictions are a whole separate animal, and they're actually very much like adultery, if you will, which is the last of what I call the 4 A's that will tell you whether or not a marriage can be saved. And adultery actually is bringing another person into the relationship that muddies the water and interferes with the interaction between two people. The same is true if the thing that they've brought in is a substance or a behavior that interferes with the interaction between the two people. And I got to say here, just as I'm thinking about it, that sometimes that other person isn't a romantic interest. Sometimes it can be someone outside of the marriage who is interfering, such as parents, in-laws, brothers, sisters, friends, anybody that interferes with that relationship between the husband and the wife. It's going to cause some serious problems, because now you're not just looking at two people, you're looking at a triangle. And being able to work within a triangle when only two people are there, that's not going to work. And you didn't sign up for that anyway. So those are some situations where you might really need to have either extra training, and certainly a licensed mental health professional has had that training. I was licensed as a clinical psychologist a while back, and so I have that training in my background. But I realized that some people who are new as marriage and family therapists, even, they may be a little uncertain about what that looks like in the room, which is really where my focus is, what's going on right there in the room. And you might need some extra supervision or case consultation, even beyond the stage where you have your license. But most certainly, and where my heart really lies in this whole process with the Institute for Relationship Development, is in helping those who serve as pastors, pastoral counselors, lay counselors, marriage mentors, coaches. We have a lot of different names for people who are like me and like mental health professionals in many ways, and that we really care about couples. We want to help save as many marriages as we can. But that particular group of people has limited time and not limited ability. I want to make that perfectly clear. It's not about a limited ability, but it's limited time and limited exposure to that level of training that can actually help you recognize and work with, when am I dealing with abandonment? How do I deal with abandonment when I'm trying to work with a couple? How do I deal with abuse, whether it's past or it's present, or whether it's in the relationship? There are just so many ways, and there are different kinds of abuse that could be going on. And how do I deal with addictions or adultery? Those kinds of things can be very complicated. And in that case, your passion for helping a couple save their marriage can actually muddy the water for you in terms of when you need to reach out and ask for extra help with those things that are beyond the scope of your personal training and your experience in working with couples. There's no shame in that. It's just you need a place to find that. Sometimes there are entire like marriage ministries where people can get together as a group and talk about what's going on and get some help from a mental health professional that maybe as a consultant to the group. And that's part of what the Institute for Relationship Development is is there for, is to provide that kind of support for ministries in particular, and for anyone who wants to talk about what it's like to sit in a room with a couple who is either conflicted or devitalized and they're really struggling. Okay? So I hope if that's you, you'll feel compelled to reach out and check out the resources that we have available on the website. And I'll put the link below. We'll get to that in a minute. But I want to address one more factor here that muddies the water in your work with couples, and that is the concept of a character disorder. Now, that sounds like a really interesting term, and there are a lot of people who throw around narcissism and borderline personality disorder and, you're a psychopath or a sociopath. All kinds of terms get thrown around, and sometimes those terms are thrown out there because we're hurt and we're defensive, and you got to realize that that's what's motivating your couples to say that in the first place. The thing that's really risky is that there's a lot of information on the internet, right here on YouTube, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, that will talk about narcissistic or borderline personality in relationship. I want to caution you that if someone says, I think my mate is a narcissist, for example, you want to really weigh that, because in reality, if you're existing and you're able to be effective in life, you've got some narcissistic traits. Narcissism actually exists on a continuum. So there's the healthy narcissism that says, you're not going to treat me badly. I can get things done. I am confident. I can be assertive. I matter. And the far end, where you're totally discounting everyone else's input, what their experience is, what their needs are, and that's very extreme. And in the middle, there are a whole lot of different expressions of healthy narcissism and pathological narcissism. And if you want to sort through that and learn more about it, I'd be happy to help you find some additional resources through the Institute that can help you decipher all of that. But just to be cautious when a couple says, my mate is this or my mate is that, you might really need to get some outside help for that one as well. It's no shame if you can't help everybody. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't help everybody save their marriage either. So sometimes it is not a possibility for them at that point in time. You're going to hear the hope come up, because I always have hope for everybody, everywhere, all the time. I'm an optimist, okay? But I'm also learned to be very realistic, and that sometimes people need more help than what they're getting from the person they're working with, first of all, but also sometimes they need more help than they even want. And that's true with people who have been dealing with abandonment, abuse, addictions, adultery, or a personality disorder of some sort. And sometimes they don't want help. And if they don't want help, they're not going to do anything. And being careful to not get caught into that loop, into that pathological loop between a husband and a wife, where they're both pulling on you in different directions, where the blame is constant, where you can't seem to get them to move beyond. That's a time when I would say you really need to talk to somebody who can help you figure out what's really going on there. And if you're interested in the Institute to help you with that, you can check it out at irdmembers.com, where we do have some free resources available for you right now. You can access them. And if you're not familiar with Prepare-Enrich, we also offer that training to get you to be a certified facilitator. So you'll know what I'm talking about when I talk about this assessment. Wonderful tool, lots of great things ahead. And I wish you all the best in your work with couples. I know you're going to be able to help so many people get where they need to be in their relationship, in love, and in life. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you real soon in another video. Take care.